What happens with this stream? I just talk, do I?
Yeah.
There's no like presenting.
between 10 and 15 terrorists in that situation, which I find very hard to describe, but they forced us out of the window of our home, down outside into the ground. Avi was injured on the way, and she suffers from pain until this day in her knee. My ribs were broken on the way out of the house. We were forced, again at gunpoint, to take them to our car, and they shot at us on the way. I was wounded in my left wrist. They pushed me from behind. I fell to the ground, and then we were forced into the car and driven with 3 terrorists. One was sitting in the back with a long knife, holding it right in front of even my face, and we were driven into Gaza. We crossed the border. The driver was screaming to people in Gaza that prisoners, prisoners, he was shouting. They call us prisoners, hostages. And we were transferred, we were blindfolded, and we were transferred to 2 cars in Gaza, and then we were forced out of the car into a home, down into a tunnel. A dark tunnel, a small tunnel, bumping our heads on the way, a very low ceiling, and this we were forced into a small niche, and then shortly after that they brought in a young man from our community of Kfar Aza. He was full of blood from his head, and all of his clothes were covered in blood. We knew this young man since he was born. He's still in captivity. Shortly after that, they brought in a woman and her 3 children from our community, and she told us that they had murdered her husband and her daughter in their house before they were kidnapped. We spent 3 days together in a tunnel, the 7 of us, in very cramped, a very small niche, and 4 armed terrorists that were guarding us with, I mentioned they were armed, and obviously we were all in a state of shock and trying to comfort each other, especially the young children, and whose father and sister had been murdered in their home. Do you want to continue from when we got out of the tunnel?
Yeah. So Keith and I were hostages. I was there for 51 days. Keith was there for 484 days. And we haven't come back to life because we're worried about the hostages that are still there. We know what they're going through. We come from a community that are peacemakers, and we've always been like that, and we're going to stay like that because we're innocent people with hearts that care, and we want good. Our community lost 64 people in such a brutal way, and there was families that were burnt alive, babies that were killed, mothers that were raped in front of their family. And Gali and Zivi from Kfar Aza, that you can see that I carry them close to my heart. They're from my community, and I'm very, very worried about them. We have 50 hostages still left in Gaza, and we know that 20 of them are still alive, and we know that they're hidden. They're hidden underneath the ground, just like Keith and I were. One of the times, the Hamas terrorists took us underneath the ground, and I touched death. I was sure that I'm going to die. Keith looked at me and said, I don't have any air. And he was trying to collect the oxygen, but there was not. We were left there to die. They didn't even care about us. We were taken. A basic need of a human being is air. But everything was taken away from us. We weren't allowed to move. We had to just lie down from 5 o'clock until 10 o'clock the next morning and sit the whole day and keep quiet. We weren't allowed to talk. Sometimes, only sometimes, we were allowed to whisper, but most of the time we had to just move the time by trying to think what next is going to happen. What worst thing is going to happen? Because so many worst and terrible things happen to us all the time. There wasn't a minute that I could say to myself, okay, relax. I had the feeling that they're going to kill me all the time, or they're going to kill Keith, and I was worried about him all the time. I'm a witness to one of the girls that was touched because he felt like it. I'm a witness to one of the girls that they beat at her, and Keith will tell a little bit of more because he was there in the room. I just heard it, and I saw what happened to her after she came back. 4 terrorists just beat at her with a stick, and while they were beating her, one of the terrorists came into the room that I was in and started hitting the door and the wall so we could see what they were hitting her with. And we have Alon Oel, that's about 22 years old, that he was trying to protect himself, and they threw a grenade, and pieces of the grenade are in his eyes until this day. Nearly for 2 years, he's going blind. He's blind in one eye, and he's going blind in the other eye. They aren't even human enough to take it out of his eyes. So we were starved. I lost 10 kilos. I was starving all the time. I had to beg for water. Until today, I need water next to me all the time. I can't feel thirsty at all. I cannot lock myself in a bathroom because I'm scared, because I was locked in rooms there and taken under the ground and been forgot of. Most of the time, I just wanted to die. It was too much for me, being a human being, going through what I went through, and to see what the Hamas terrorists did to Keith and to the girls. The Hamas terrorists are responsible of taking Keith and I with our pajamas from our house. We're innocent people. And one of the times we were in a building and they told us, get up and get dressed. They dressed us looking like Arabs with a hijab and a galabia that Keith wore. And they told us that we need to leave the building with all the Palestinians in that building because it was dangerous. And they told us the army, the Israeli army, told them to leave the building with us because it was dangerous. So if everybody didn't understand, I was there and I'm a witness that the Israelis are taking care of the innocent people. But we do know, because we were there, that they're using the innocent people. In one of the houses, there were rockets going out of the building, and the building was shaking, and I was looking at the ceiling and counting the cracks to see if I'm going to die at that minute, or Keith might die. And then the Hamas terrorist came in with 2 children, 1 2 years old and 3 years old. And he said, don't worry, it's us shooting Israel. And he looked at his kids and he clapped his hand and he said, beautiful. And his kids clapped his hands. They're 2 and 3 years old. And I was shocked. I'm a teacher. And I would never even think of doing something like that and teaching kids to hate because of killing. We were in a dangerous place. We're in the middle of a war as innocent people with nothing to protect ourselves. We didn't have a knife. We didn't have a gun. We never even thought of doing anything. All we did was lay down on a filthy dirty mattress and try to keep alive. And that's what we did. I did for 51 days and Keith did for 448 days. And
84.
Now there's 20 hostages and 50 there that need to come home. Everybody's suffering. All the Jews in the world, all the innocent people and good people that feel for us. And we just have to bring them home now before it's too late. And I just want to end by saying that it's the worst thing that any human being should go through. And it's the worst that any human being that was in Gaza had to worry about Keith, my husband, and the girls that I was with. What happened on the 7th, that they burnt kids and people alive, and they just did everything they wanted. We need to stop that. And it needs to stop. The war needs to stop. The hostages need to come home. The Hamas terrorists need to release the hostages, and everything will end. Thank you very much.
I spent time in captivity with four hostages that remain in Gaza, and today marks 650 days that the hostages are in captivity. One of them was Matan Angrist. He was seriously critically injured on the 7th of October. He suffered burns and wounds and infections that were not treated. We spent 67 days together, locked up in a very small room with no windows, dark room. We had to beg for them to open the door so that we could go to the toilet. We were abused. We experienced violence. We also experienced and were subjected to psychological abuse and many comments with sexual orientation, speaking about our private parts, and them talking about, asking about our family members, our women family members. They told me that they want to marry my daughter and asked me if that's okay with me, if I would allow that, and talked about sexual preferences of us. And we were starved and we were dehydrated and went through extended periods of time of starvation and not having enough water. And as I said, Matan was seriously injured and he was suffering from pain throughout the whole time. They were constantly telling me that I will be the first one to leave, and they told Matan he would be the last one to leave out of the hostages. This is what Matan looked like right before October the 7th. And this is what Matan looked like around a year ago in July, after he was lynched on the way to Gaza. And there are videos that show Matan being kidnapped and lynched when they took him into Gaza. He was held in a tunnel. He suffers from asthma. He had severe respiratory distress. He was hardly able to breathe. I met Matan after he had spent 3 weeks in a tunnel, and he was in a very desperate situation. I mentioned, I want to focus on the 50 hostages that remain in Gaza and the urgency to bring them home. And I share my experiences and experiences of other hostages that I witnessed in order to express the urgency. I also spent time with Gali and Ziv Berman from our community, Gaza, that we have known since they were born. They were both injured, suffered injuries, and even though they were twins and they were kidnapped from their homes right next to each other in our community, they were separated. And they have lived their whole life together. They love each other very much, have a very, very close relationship, worked together up until the 7th of October.
This is where they lived. I want everybody to look at this picture. They don't even have a knife to cut salad in their room. They don't have a gun to protect themselves. The Hamas terrorists just had you heard that about Emily Damari? She lived very close to them, and what they did, they just burnt everything in such a brutal way. There's a girl named Ophir. She called her father to say that she's been shot. His father couldn't get there on time. She died slowly. She was lying in her blood. She was 21 years old. What happened to the people on the kibbutz was beyond. And just like Keith said before, it wasn't a war. We didn't do anything. We didn't have a gun to shoot back. We didn't have anything. The only thing that we did is to try and keep ourselves alive. And can you imagine being a father of a child that's 20 years old and that you know that she's lying in her blood and trying to keep herself alive, but she died? And that happened to so many of the Kama Alpine?
over 1,200.
Over 1,200 youngsters. There were youngsters in the Nova that ran and tried to go, and they didn't manage, but they died slowly. So I just want to say that Keith and I nearly died slowly too, and there's still hostages that nobody can see because they're hidden. What we see in the news, and you see in the news many times, is what you can see. But what you can't see is the 20 hostages that are still alive and begging to get out of there, begging for air. It's a basic thing that every human being needs. It's terrible. It's just terrible.
I just want to correct, because accuracy is very important to me, and I misunderstood Aviva's question. Over 1,200 people were killed and murdered on October the 7th. And I think you were talking about the Nova Festival, and I think there only over 300 were murdered, I think. But I just want to stress the fact that this war that we're in now was started when Hamas launched the terrorist attack, unprovoked, on innocent people like Aviva and I. Babies that were killed, murdered, and kidnapped into Gaza, and were murdered in Gaza. Elderly people, women. I assume you all saw footage of hostage release of women in their 80s that were kidnapped into Gaza, sick people, and I mean, I could go on and on about the atrocities that Hamas committed on the 7th of October and until this day. I was held for 484 days, out of which 6 months I was alone. I was locked up in a room by myself. I was disconnected totally from any media, or I had no idea what was going on a lot of the time. And terrorists kicked me and spat on me and cursed me for no reason, nothing that I had said, nothing. I was instructed to lie down on the floor on my back, and that's what I did. And I was only just trying to create a connection with the terrorists that held me captive, a positive relationship with them, being nice to them, smiling to them, saying good morning to them every morning and good night to them every night, thanking them for food, for water when they brought it to me, thanking them for unlocking the door to let me go to the toilet, which I had to ask for. I did my best to create a calm atmosphere and environment and to show empathy to them, even though I knew these were terrorists that belonged to a terrorist organization that carried out this horrendous attack on innocent people. I spent time with separately 4 hostages that are still held in captivity. I mentioned them. One of them is a father of 2 daughters, aged 4 and 2 today. They were aged 2 and 6 months when they saw their father being taken at gunpoint from them. His wife as well saw that. I also want to stress the fact, I also want to mention that they were constantly trying to convert me to Islam. And they were always telling me, and I spent extended periods of time with around 60 terrorists. I was relocated 33 times. I was moved between tunnels, schools, apartments, and houses. So I spent time with around 60 terrorists, and they were constantly trying to convert me to Islam, telling me that only Muslims go to heaven. All other people that are not Muslims go to hell. And telling me that I should become a Muslim, otherwise I will go to hell, and describing Islam as the best religion and Muslims as the best people, telling me that they have no problem with death because if they die, they are martyrs, and if their family dies, they are martyrs. Women, children, wives, children of these people, if they are killed in war, they told me, they go to heaven. And they said that life is just a small part of the journey. The larger part of the journey is in heaven. And that's what they said they are focusing on, to be good people in this life so that they will go to heaven. And part of being a good person, according to them, is being a Muslim and praying 5 times a day and fasting on Ramadan and several other things, believing in Allah. These people abused me, tortured me, and I witnessed, Aviva mentioned a woman being tortured, and when I say torture, I say it in a literal sense. This woman, they had tied her hands together at the wrist, they had tied her feet together at her ankles, they had covered her face with tape, they had put her down on her back on the floor. They called me to come into this room where this woman was lying, and there were 3 terrorists in the room. 2 of them were taking turns beating her with a rod, and the 3rd one was holding a metal rod with a sharp pointed end, which he had put on her forehead. He was standing behind this woman. He was holding the rod and applying pressure to this woman's forehead with the sharp pointed rod. And I witnessed this, and it haunts me to this day. They were accusing this woman of something that had nothing to do with reality, and I know that, and they told me that I must tell her to confess, otherwise they would continue beating her, and what I described, the man holding the sharp metal rod. And then I saw the same woman being threatened with death when the terrorist held a pistol to her head and said she must tell the truth, otherwise he is going to kill her. I tell this story and many other stories, and I relive this horrific experience that I had, and it haunts me to this day. And feeling like I could not, or I did not do anything to stop this torture to this woman is something that causes immense stress to me. I was also threatened with death several times. I had guns pointed at me, rifles and pistols, and they threatened to kill me. Also, just out of the blue, without any provocation.
I just want to say that we know that the Bibas family they said that Israel killed them, that Israel murdered the Bibas family. And when they came back dead, we were told that they were strangled by their hands. They didn't even shoot them. They strangled them, and their kids and a mum. And we know of so many hostages that are just chained in chains for nearly 2 years without air, without food, treated like they're not human beings. And we are here as witnesses to tell the world that if we leave the situation to be like that and hostages there, that means that anybody in the world can do whatever they want to. They can rape, they can touch, they can burn, they can starve, they can do whatever they want to. This war needs to stop, and the world needs to stand for humanity, because we cannot allow anybody to treat anybody in this world like Hamas is treating the hostages. They are responsible that they took them, and they need to be responsible enough and human enough to let them go home. Came back like a skeleton. And until today, he suffers of so many things, because he was there for 484 days. And we have the hostages that are there for nearly 2 years. We need them to come home before it's too late.
We'll open up for questions. Just whoever wants to ask, just introduce yourself and the art that you are coming from. Yes.
Thank you very much for the time and for sharing your stories. Aviva, it's nice to see you again face to face. Keith, nice to meet you face to face. Remy Inocencio, CBS News foreign correspondent based here. The stories that you've shared, the harrowing horror stories, are a window into the continued world of these hostages still held in Gaza. 20, as we expect to still be alive, that we hope to be alive. Do you think that the continued war, the continued bombardment of Gaza, is in the best interest for their survival?
I do know that Hamas is not releasing the hostages, and that's the whole problem. They need to release the hostages, and this whole war will finish. They're responsible of taking them. They must be responsible to bring them back home. But they're keeping them. And they're ruining what's happened. They're ruining so many people's lives.
I think that Hamas terrorists carried out this terrorist attack on innocent people. And I think that it's up to them to agree to release the hostages and to agree to not threaten Israel in the future. Israel has a right to defend itself, and Israel has a right to ensure security in the future. And I also believe that there's suffering on both sides because of Hamas. And Aviva and I have always wanted peace with anybody that wants peace. And I continue to believe that even after what I went through. And I think that the leaders of the world, our leaders, need to get allies, mediating countries to put pressure on Hamas to realize that we're talking about lives that need to be saved. We're talking about 50 people that need to be saved, be alive back to be treated. And so all of them are, after 650 days, they're needing medical care and treatment, and the deceased need to be brought back to a proper burial. And how that needs to be done is through negotiations. We'll reach an agreement, bring all the hostages back, the war will be stopped, Hamas will not be a threat to Israel's security anymore.
Peter Cardwell from Talk Aviva, we've spoken before. Thank you so much for speaking to me from Israel. There was a 433-day period where you worked together, where Keith was in captivity and you weren't. Could you just tell us a little bit about that from both your perspectives? When you can be released, Aviva, but Keith was still there.
When I was out of Gaza, I wanted to believe, like they told me, that Keith is coming home the day after or 2 days later, but he didn't. I was sort of kidnapped in my feelings that I just didn't know what to do with myself, because I was just full of sadness. All I wanted to do was cry, but I didn't lose my hope. I got up every morning and I found people to listen to me. I've been all over the world in newspapers, in every TV, and shouting and standing on tables. I went to the States while Keith wasn't here 11 times, and I've met Biden 4 times. I've met Trump twice, and I've been standing and talking for Keith and the girls and for all the hostages. And now I can't go back to my life. All I do is think about Gali and Zivi and all these hostages that are innocent, that just need to come home. There's 4 fathers that their children are waiting for. Can you imagine this little girl that's 3 years old giving her father a kiss, because this is the poster next to her bed. So she gives her father a kiss and says to him good night, and everybody just wants to cry. They need to come back. They all need to come back. And I'm going to continue. We're not going to stop. And I'm not going to stop because these are humans that feel, that got hearts, that are... I want everybody just to imagine somebody that they love, that is underneath this ground and waiting to be rescued, starved, with nothing to do, has to keep completely and utterly quiet all the time, with a gun in front of their face, touching death all the time, and worried. I was there. I was thought that I was forgotten, and I so many times just wanted to die because it was too much for one person to handle. And I'm lucky. I'm lucky to be sitting here. I'm lucky to be alive. I'm lucky that I have Keith next to me that is alive. But so many people during the year and 2 months that I was fighting for Keith to come home asked me, have you heard about Keith? Do you know anything about Keith? And I used to say, no, I don't even know if he's alive. And just think about yourselves. When you have a child and he falls and he scratches himself and he's got a little sore, you hug him, you kiss him. We weren't allowed to do that there. I wasn't allowed to hug my husband when they tried to kill him. I wasn't allowed to hug the girls when they tried to kill him. I had to keep quiet. I had to shut myself down. And it's very difficult. It's a very, very difficult time for all the Jews in the world, for all the good people that care about us and are standing for us. And I just want to say that everybody that's fighting, the pro-Palestinians that are fighting, they do not know what they're doing, because they're doing a mistake. They're just making the Hamas stronger. Hamas are terrorists, and they need to stop that. And the only way they will stop it is by the leaders that will say, no, I don't want this to happen in England. I don't want this to happen in America. I don't want anything like what happened to us to happen in a different world. But if it continues, it just means that it can be and happen wherever.
Radio. Just expanding on the moment when you were released. So you were both released, as I understand, as part of temporary ceasefire agreements. Can you talk to us about what it was that your captors had said to you about your release, how that sort of happened, and then the actual moment itself? What was going through your mind, and what was the first thing you did afterwards?
When I was released after 51 days, I remember myself sitting in the bus on the way home and trying to figure out how am I going to meet my 3 girls without my son, because I was sure that he was murdered on the 7th. He was on the same community, Kibbutz Kfar Aza, and we got disconnected from him. He said that he can hear the Arabic from outside, and I was sure that he was killed. So it was a very difficult moment, saying goodbye to Keith not knowing if I'll ever see him, knowing that my son is dead. And I remember deciding I have to be happy. I have to be happy for my kids that at least they got their mother back. It was difficult. It wasn't easy. So I did it the first day, and I said I'm going to be happy because they got their mother back, and it's a lot for them. And they really, really struggled to go through that time. They, both the parents, older people, and they knew that they might never, ever see them again. So we're the lucky family. Between me, Gali, and Zivi, and Matan, and Omri, and Alon, and Yair, and all of the hostages that are still there suffering, and their families are suffering, to have that moment that they can sit next to their loved ones and say, we're the lucky ones. And I want everybody in this room, when you wake up tomorrow morning or in a year's time, I want you all to say to yourselves, I did everything I could for humanity, for people that have hearts. Because it's very easy just not to do anything, or just say it didn't happen. But it happened. I was there, I saw my husband being tortured and nearly killed. And nobody wants that for anybody that they love.
To reply to your question, I was told 2 days before I was released that I would be released. Wasn't sure that was going to happen because, as Aviva mentioned, when she was taken and we were separated, they told us that I would be released the day after her, which obviously did not happen. So yeah, I knew I was going to be released on Thursday. I was released on 2 days after, on Saturday. They woke me up early in the morning on Saturday. They told me to take off all of my clothes. I was standing there naked in front of them. Humiliated. They brought me clothes. They told me to get dressed, and then they took me by car from the apartment. I was moved to between at least 5 cars on the way. And in each car, somebody was videoing me. A Hamas terrorist was videoing me and telling me to say something to Hamas. The first one that said that to me, I said, I'm not sure what to say. So he said, maybe I want to thank Hamas for everything that they did for me. So that's what I did. And that's what I did at least 5 times on the way to the location where I was released. I was taken there. I was given a certificate with my name and my birthday, and it had the date of arrest. I was arrested, according to Hamas. And where I was arrested, on my community of Kfar Aza, and I was given that. I was told I would be taken on stage, and if anybody is interested in seeing that, you can Google Keith Siegel's release. There are many videos of that. I was taken in a car full of armed terrorists with their face covered. I was taken on stage. I was told before that I would be taken on stage. I should wave to the audience and say thank you. That's what I did. I waved. I did not say thank you, and then I was taken off stage. A huge crowd of armed terrorists. And again, you can see it on online. And then I was taken to the Red Cross vehicle, not being sure I was actually going to be released until I was back in Israel. Worried something might happen, and at the last minute, they might decide not to release me.
Kate Davis from The Sun. It's really emotional to hear the testimonies firsthand. I was in Israel a few months ago, and I admire the resilience you've all shown in the face of such inhumanity. I just wondered whether you both fear a repeat of October 7th and the atrocity that happened that day.
I can tell you that I was told over and over again by the terrorists that there will be another October the 7th. That's what they told me. They told me that I should leave Israel, I should take my family and go, otherwise we might die in the next attack. And they asked me, why am I living in Israel? I'm an American citizen, American-Israeli citizen, and it's their land, they told me. We stole their land, we stole their homes, and what right do I have to live there? I think it's the responsibility not only of the Israeli government, but of the world to make sure that Hamas does not have the ability to present a danger to people. And Hamas presents a danger to people on both sides. I do not wish any decent human being to suffer, wherever they live, whatever their religion is. I believe that every decent, moral person has the right to live in peace and security.
Richard Ashmore from the Daily Express. Thank you very much for speaking to us today. I was privileged enough to go to your kibbutz, Kfar Aza, in March this year. I met with Chen Kotler. And two parts to my question, really. Some people have returned to the kibbutz. Have you, or are you planning to? And what does that feel like for you in going back there? And the other question, when I spoke to the people who were there, do you think that Netanyahu, the current Israeli government, is doing enough? Could they do more? And what do you think they could do?
I want to ask you, would you want to lie down on a bed that there's holes in the floor because Hamas terrorists tried to kill me there? Or when I open the window and look in front of me, most of my neighborhood was killed or kidnapped. You wouldn't want that for yourself. I don't want that for myself either. And I want to just say that not many people have gone back to live in Kfar Aza. So many people are just, their soul is destroyed of what they went through. My children lost their best friends. My daughter, in the same group of children, grew up from the day of when they were babies together. One lost her husband with 3 little kids. The other one lost her father because the Hamas terrorists just killed him. And she had both of her parents kidnapped. She's 33 years old, and they are too. And they have to continue living. It's difficult. Kfar Aza went through too much. I can tell you that there's so many houses that there's nobody to go back to. Nobody. Because the people were killed with their children. And we cannot allow ourselves to even think about the 9/11, sorry, 7th of October, sorry, to happen again. We can't even allow ourselves to think that something like that will happen again, because what happened should never, ever, ever happen again in any place in the world.
I would like to return to Kfar Aza. I've been back 4 times since my release, and I'm always have a desire to go there and see my home and my community for over 40 years. And I meet people from the community, and it's very emotional and very, I think it's very empowering what we've all gone through, this mutual tragedy. I pray for security of, as I mentioned before, for everybody, but specifically our community and our area. I think, I believe that it's important to return to the area. I believe that it empowers me, it empowers us, and it also proves to Hamas that we will not I don't know if surrender is the right, that they are not going to force us out of our country, of our communities, and that should be clear to them.
I just want to say that Keith and I have lost our house. We've lost our community. We've lost our job. We've lost our friends. And it shouldn't be like that. We've lost so many things. And we're trying to collect the love of our family in our hearts and to get up in the morning and smile, even though there's still 50 hostages in Gaza. Because we're not going to leave, we're not going to lose our hope. And that's why we're here, to talk for them, to all of these. We're not here to talk about ourselves if we go back to Gaza, if we don't. Because we can breathe. I can drink water, I can eat. I can open my fridge and take something to eat. They can't, because they starved. And we do know of innocent people in Gaza that just want a little bit of flour to make their family some pitot. And the Hamas killed them. Because they want to take it, they want everything. And we need this war to stop, and we need your help. Thank you. And you asked about Bibi Netanyahu. I believe that my government is doing everything they can to bring the hostages home. I believe that from the bottom of my heart. Because Bibi Netanyahu is not a terrorist. He's a good person with a heart and wants good for his country. But we need help. We need help from England, from the whole world.
If there are no more questions, we'll end the press conference now. Thank you very much for sharing with us. Is there anything else that you'd like to add before we end this?
I would like to ask each and every one of you to do whatever you can to help save people. And I think you have a lot of power to spread the word to people, that you're people that listen to you, people that watch you. And I think it's very, very important that everybody knows that there are 50 people, a woman and 49 men, innocent people that have been held for 650 days. They and their families are suffering day by day. And I believe you have a very important role of letting people know the reality of this and to balance the coverage in the news. There's an opportunity to save people. There's an opportunity to bring an end to the war and prevent further death of people. So I urge you to do whatever you can to pass that message on to your audiences. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Would you be ready now?
I just want to say that it would be easier for me and Keith to go to the sea, to have fun. But we can't. We just can't allow ourselves. Because we know, because we're human, because we've got hearts, because we feel. It has to end.
Thank you.
We'll speak later on. You did a really good interview with me. I know you did not talk to me, but you did a really good interview with me. A lot of people, we did what we never, ever did.
You're amazing work.